Leadership is a matter of how to be, not how to do. You and I spend most of our lives learning how to do and teach other people how to do, yet in the end we know it is the quality and character of the leader that determines the performance, the results. So leadership is a matter of how to be, not how to do.
To say that it's an honor to be here would be a massive understatement. So thank you very much on the day before Thanksgiving for giving us some time. I'm curious as we get going, an estimate. How many interviews on leadership have you done during your career? Perfect answer.
I have no idea how many interviews on leadership. Everyone has been exciting, and I've been honored to do them, and I've tried to be as forthright as I can be.
Yeah, it is a pleasure to be here. And maybe the easiest place to start, how do you define the concept of leadership?
I've worked over the years, and this definition stays with me. Leadership is a matter of how to be, not how to do. You and I spend most of our lives learning how to do and teach other people how to do, yet in the end we know it is the quality and character of the leader that determines the performance, the results. So leadership is a matter of how to be, not how to do.
Under that umbrella, is that a function of your head or your heart? Is that something that you think consciously about, or is that just something, kind of the school of thought that you're born
They're
with that?
inextricably together.
Connected.
There's no division at all. It's your head, it's your heart. Yes.
Together. If you had to identify, and I know you've done this on many things that I've had the honor to watch, if you had to reflect upon the first time in your life that you identified leadership, like you said, that's leadership, do you remember what that was, or any event from your life where you just said, that is how to be?
Well, you have to go way, way back in time. I lived in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, big coal, big steel, big labor town. I was the mother of a little boy 8 years old, and somehow I found myself the leader of Girl Scout Troop 17. 30 little girls, 10 years old. We were 2 blocks from the mill gates. And I took them for 6 weeks until we could find a real leader. And we stayed together until the 10-year-olds graduated from Johnstown High School. That's when I had to define leadership for myself.
In the context of doing that, what were, if you remember, what were some of the initial obstacles, things you came up against, fears, insecurities? Maybe in your case you didn't have any of that, but what?
I wouldn't call them obstacles, but distilling language. You don't want 5 sentences. You want a few words.
Mm-hmm.
And that just seemed right. Somewhere along the way, it emerged.
I also infer from your definition and discussion of leadership, that it's not a function, as you see it, of position. It's not
Oh, no up, down, top, bottom, superior, subordinate. No,
Yeah.
it's circular. And we all share.
I have seen things that you have done with Alan Mulally from Ford, and I've heard him describe you as his favorite leader. If you were telling somebody else the qualities that Alan Mulally brings to leadership, what would those be? Accomplished.
Alan Mulally looks at his people and he gives them the kind of leadership, respect and appreciation. And he and I did a leadership session. I was teaching every other month at West Point, and I thought it would be a lot more exciting for that class of 24 cadets if I took a great thought leader with me, not just Francis, but a great thought leader. He was one of those. Now we're sitting knee to knee. There are 24 second-year cadets, and I introduced him as the great thought leader I brought with me, Alan Mulally, and I said to them, Mr. Alan Mulally is the great corporate leader in America who is famous for having transformed the Ford Motor Company. He looked at them, and in this tough voice, he looked at me and looked at them and said, I did not transform Ford Motor Company. The people of Ford transformed Ford Motor Company. Well, that's what they're learning. They all cheered, they got up, jumped up and down. I sat there totally diminished, but that was what he said. I did not. It was the people.
Yeah.
Of course, that's what they wanted to hear.
Yeah. The whole idea of, and you, of course, wrote the book on this, but like influence through humility, or just removing any kind of ego, from the I'm in charge, I'm leading, but really, the efforts of the people, that's they're leading themselves. That's a quality on a very large stage.
Yes.
That you had and that you're saying he had as well.
And still has.
Yeah.
Just so inspiring to be with.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Other people, other leaders that you think are forefront that we should be paying more attention to, either in, business or politics or the military or...
Well, I truly believe, and I use this in speeches, since the beginning of our country, there have been two institutions that have sustained the democracy. One, the public school, public education, and the United States Army. Go back, think about the beginning of our country. What public schools have meant to the poorest of our children, to all of our children, and the United States Army. Mm-hmm. They have sustained the democracy.
Oh, yeah.
To serve it, to live.
Absolutely. I wish everybody that watches this video, and I'm confident there will be many, could sit right here and look around your office at the amazing people that, have become part of your life and you've become part of theirs. But if you had to focus on first people that come to mind that were leaders that you emulated, that you saw, that kind of shaped your personal leadership journey, who would those people be and what did those people do?
Well, it was very important to find the people who were making the greatest difference, who were not just repeating the past, but if leadership is a matter of how to be, then who were these great people who were making such a difference? And we were so fortunate to have the people wanting to work with us who did.
Mm-hmm.
I met Peter Drucker in 1980, and he was so inspiring. And he was our best friend and most generous provider and did all kinds of marvelous things for us. I sometimes joke about having tattoos, and people look and they say, "What, you have tattoos?" I say, "Well, invisible ink. You can't see them, but on this side I have one. It's Peter Drucker. Ask, don't tell." My other tattoo is Peter Drucker. Think first, speak last. Now those, then, serve to live.
Yeah.
That's what we live by.
Those are some tattoos I'd like to see. Like those.
Yes, serving to live.
Yeah. Many of the people that we have in common, Marshall Goldsmith and many are disciples of Peter Drucker, and it seems like that's sort of the essence of what he had the ability to do and that you've carried on. It's simple. It's
Yes.
common language. Is there any secret to that, or is there any?
No, you live it. And whether you're the president of a Girl Scout council or later you find yourself in New York and you are the CEO of the largest organization for girls and women in the whole world, doesn't matter. Somehow, in doing your work, you distill the language and it comes to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you keep testing it.
Over and over and over.
Yes, and you have a plan of work. And once you have the mission you are passionate about, it doesn't mean you relax and say, well, we'll never have to worry about this. No. Every couple of years, we revisit the mission. Are we still passionate? Does it still say, in a few words, our reason for being, our purpose? Are we mission-focused, values-based, and demographics-driven?
Yeah.
And then we look at it as a community. Where can we make the greatest contribution? Whom do we bring in? It's very exciting.
Oh, yeah.
To build from mission on. And mission is solely, why do we do what we do? For the Girl Scouts, to help each girl reach her own highest potential. Ours today, our foundation, the Institute, what we hope to do is help leaders of today. We hope they will move into the community and make leadership a way to reach all of our people.
Mm-hmm. Is leadership, is it different in a volunteer nonprofit, from your experience, volunteer nonprofit setting, than it is in many of the organizations that are in the buildings that surround your beautiful office here that they have boards, they have stockholders, they have a bottom line? Is it a
Well,
How is it similar? How is it
I've
different?
found the greatest, most successful corporations understand the power of mission and they use it, and values, they live them. Mission focused, values based. And so, short, powerful, compelling.
And once you get the mission,
Mission is solely why do we do what we do?
and everything that you do should be connected.
You test it. And the mission, you don't say, well, for the next 20 years, we don't have to worry. No, we keep testing the mission. And we may find after a couple of years, we need to distill it. We need to take this out and bring this in. There's something very urgent about the change. So the mission is always, we're passionate about it. Why do we do what we do? Peter Drucker always said it should fit on a t-shirt. Well, I've looked at t-shirts, 7 words and you're lost. So there you are.
Very, very simple. Was there anything intentional or that you ever instituted to build leaders, to help them develop, to help them grow, to, how do you go about the whole idea of nurturing or developing leaders within an organization or within a family?
Well, the mission tells us what we're going to do to help each girl reach her own highest potential. And that means we give the best possible training to our leaders. And when I was with the Girl Scouts, it seemed only reasonable to talk to Dr. Reggie Hertzlinger of Harvard Business School about developing a 5-day seminar at Harvard Business School for the Girl Scout community leaders. And so, mission focused. Why solely? Why do we do what we do? Not what or how or who. And when Peter says it should fit on a t-shirt, that is the most wonderful little lesson that you keep right here.
Honestly, I can't figure out if you took more from Peter Drucker or he took more from you. As he talks about the importance of your mission and how you establish it, when you first met him, had you already established the vision of the Girl Scouts, or did he?
We had a very powerful mission, yes. And Peter loved the fact that we were mission focused and had this short, powerful mission statement, and it did fit on a t-shirt. And he liked the fact that the values flowed through everything, and that's the education to help each girl reach her own highest potential and have the organization make an enormous difference in the community as they work with girls and women.
If I infer here, the whole idea of a leader is, given the mission and given your discussion, it's a very personalized thing that emanates from the follower. If I'm going to help you be the best you can be and realize your full potential, it's really a custom approach.
Well, you have
for each.
remarkable learning opportunities, and all of your materials you keep examining and celebrating. And if we say, well, this was fine for last year and the year before, but I think we've gone beyond there. Thank you, goodbye, and every 3 years, a very big organization-wide review. But along the way, in those 3 years, we keep testing.
Mm-hmm.
We always have to be highly contemporary.
So there's a
Yes.
formal measurement.
Yes.
Yeah. Are we
Yes.
still
Yes.
attracting? Are we still relevant? All those things.
Our statement of purpose
Uh-huh.
and essential qualities. Are we giving the right training? The most contemporary,
Mm-hmm.
exciting training to our leaders. Not just one time, okay, you're trained. No. Continuing education of all of our leaders at every level.
Yeah.
Learning, growing, it's all part of the excitement.
It's not a static thing. It just
Never.
It keeps.
Never. Never.
I have been impressed with what I have heard you say about your grandmother and her role in any kind of leadership credit that you've received.
Mm-hmm.
What could you tell us about this wonderful person, your grandmother?
Well, my grandmother had 7 children, and she and my grandfather, who was Justice of the Peace from the time he was 38 until he was 93 and running for his last 3-year term. And in their house, they thought it was only normal to build a small church-sized pipe organ, and my grandfather played the pipe organ in the Methodist church. And in the pipe organ in their home, they had a shelf above the keyboard, of course, and on that shelf were 2 of the most beautiful, tall, ancient Chinese vases. Now I'm 7 or 8 years old, and every Saturday I go to see Mama Wicks. I'm wild about my grandmother. So every week I go, I say, may I please play with the vases? No, no one, Francis, ever touches. So finally, one Saturday, I'm feeling very assertive, and I say, I want to play with those vases. And I actually stamp my foot at my wonderful grandmother and say, I want those vases, in my worst tone. Instead of telling me what a bad girl I was, she led me over to a little Victorian love seat facing the pipe organ, dark red velvet upholstery. We sit down, she puts her arm around my shoulders. We're looking at the vases, and she says, let me tell you about the vases. Long, long ago, when your mother was 8 years old, in this little town, and it was a very small town, there was a Chinese laundroman, and every Tuesday he picked up your grandfather's shirts, brought them back Thursday, beautifully washed, starched, ironed. He wore his hair in a queue, a cap, and a long Chinese robe. And the bad boys would chase him as he made his deliveries and call him Chinky Chinky Chinaman and worse. One day there was a knock on my kitchen door, she said. I opened it, and there was Mr. Yi with a huge bundle wrapped in newspaper. And she said, oh, good morning, Mr. Yi. Won't you come in? Please sit down. Mr. Yi handed her this giant package. She opened it, and in it were two exquisite, ancient Chinese vases. And she said, "Oh, Mr. Yves, are far too valuable. I could not accept them. I want you to have them." She looked at him and said, "Mr. Yi, why do you want me to have your vases?" He looked at her with tears came down his cheek, and he said, "Mrs. Wicks, I've been in this town for 10 years. They won't let me bring my wife and children, so I am going back to China to be with them, and the vases were all I brought with me. I want you to have them." She looked at Mr. Yi and said, "But Mr. Yi, why do you want me to have your vases?" He looked at her with tears and said, "Mrs. Wicks, I have been in this town for 10 years, and you are the only person who ever called me Mr. Yi." You can imagine the bad words, the bad boys. So when my grandmother told me that story, I cried my heart out. She held me and cried my heart out for poor Mr. Yi. And when she died, she left a little card. I want Francis to have Mr. Yi's vases. Now today they are in my living room. Every time I look at them, I remember Mr. Yi and respect for all people. Now, would I ever forget that lesson?
I don't think anyone will or should.
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. That was an amazing story and amazingly well told.
Thank you.
You were at the forefront, whether you wanted to be or not, of inclusion, diversity, those kinds of things. I remember reading in Colin Powell's book that at the time he joined the Army was one of the few organizations anywhere where he was going to be promoted on the basis of his willingness and ability. How far have we come with inclusion and diversity and that whole, and how far do we have to go?
We have made some progress, but not enough. We have a wonderful battle cry from a long time ago when the people we want to bring in, people we want to attract, make part of us, when they look at us, can they find themselves? If you look at our boards, look at the national staff, look at the community leaders. When the people we really have to bring in, we are determined to bring them in. When they look at us, can they find themselves? And if you say, "Well, not yet, but we're going to," you already are part of the past. When I walk in, when I was Girl Scouts, I walked in a board meeting with 6 of my national staff team. Do they all look like me? Of course not. When you look at the officers, the national volunteers, do they all look like me? No. When I went on to the Girl Scouts as the new national executive director, the CEO, our chairman of the board was African American. And so we just thought it was very important when they look at us, doesn't matter who, you decide, can they find themselves? And when the answer is you bet they can, you are part of the future.
Very well said. And you mentioned too, like in the global context, I was certainly unaware before today. You visit 62 countries, did you say? 60?
So far, I've traveled to 62 countries. 3 years ago, I had a not so happy, really dangerous experience in an airport, not the plane, in the airport. And it was providential because suddenly I realized it's something called the global webinar. I sit there with that screen and 400 women in 40 countries or more. Recently, the MBA students in Hong Kong and China. One thing we never do is charge a fee. We want the poorest countries, the poorest leaders to have whatever we have.
What a tremendous vehicle for you to get your message, as you say, to people around the world.
Yes.
You know, it just in time, you know, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
And we put everything on the website, so all these marvelous people, we've never paid an honorarium ever.
Yeah.
Not one of these marvelous people, whether it's Peter or Alan or Marshall, not one has ever accepted an honorarium.
Why do you think that is?
Well, they love what we're doing.
Honestly, I know for a fact that they're influential people, they're powerful people, and they also wouldn't be doing something for you if you weren't living your values
Yes.
and making that kind of personal commitment.
Well, in 1976, that's a long time ago, I was the first woman in the USA. We didn't know that back in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, but they invited me to chair the United Way campaign. They didn't know that no woman had ever chaired it. And two bankers came to see me and asked me if I would chair it. I'd raised a lot of money for the Girl Scouts, and they thought we could have fun. So they said, and you can choose your vice chairman, and next year he will chair it. I said, I would like Ernie Wadsworth, president of the United Steelworkers, as my vice chairman. They looked at me, they said, what? And I was like the national president of AFL-CIO to do the kickoff. They said, we've never involved them. We will have to ask Bethlehem Steel. I said, fine. They came back wide-eyed. They said, Bethlehem Steel says their car will pick them up, the union people at the airport, bring them to the steel mill dining room for a kickoff luncheon. And the banker said, well, we will then have a dinner that night as a kickoff. For the first time, you had organized labor and the big corporations, just like this. And that year, Little Johnstown, PA had the highest per capita giving of any United Way in the USA. And a couple weeks ago, the New York Times had a little tiny article about a woman who had just become the chairman of the United Way campaign in New York City. And it mentioned that I was the first woman ever. And in 100 years, there have been two women, 100 years of United Way campaigns. There have been only 2 women ever
Wow.
to chair. All the others have been gentlemen. And so it was fun to find that out and then learn I was the first woman in that 100-year period, and this one is the second.
Well, it sounds like you knew exactly what you were doing with the labor and the management and putting
Yes,
the
yes, it was such fun. And when
a little manipulative there, maybe. I don't know.
no, just engage everyone.
Yeah.
So
With your Army ties and your passion for inclusion and with that, protest, I'm interested how you view the protests that take place in the NFL during the national anthem. It seems like that's about as controversial an issue as, you're over here, it's tough to be in the middle. But from your perspective, what do you see there? What do we learn from it? How do we make that a positive thing?
we all come together, and we are very positive about sustaining the democracy. It doesn't take care of itself. And so we find ways to bring all of us together. And whether you stand up or sit down or lie down, someone like General Lloyd Austin, some of our great thought leaders who are out there, have to be able to say to them, we appreciate the way you feel. Now, we're all together. Our job is to keep this democracy going. So, the people who want to stand up or sit down, quietly we talk to dissenters. But in the end, if this is the only way you can be a citizen of this country, then even though we would ask you not to, we will respect you. I think respect for all people has to be the most powerful message.
Yeah. And you're obviously back to mission there.
Yes,
If the mission is to keep the democracy together,
that's
you have
right.
to acknowledge and respect the dissenting. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Why did I know I was going to hear something that made sense from you on that when everyone else just seems to be, screaming from one side of the
Well,
issue or the other?
we had the right grandmother.
From your perspective, as you reflect on history and you reflect on challenges, problems, issues that our society and business has gone through, how bad off are we? Do we have the capacity or the ability, from a leadership perspective, to really tackle some of these issues?
Recently, a good friend of mine saw me and said, Frances, what have you been drinking? I said, well, all the Diet Coke, caffeine-free that I can find. He said, no, I mean alcohol. What have you been drinking? And I said, well, my first answer is a good one. He said, all this talk about bright future when everything is going to H. I said, I am very positive about a bright future, and I'll tell you why. You go to Pew Study Center and look at their latest scientific study of our 15, 17 to 23-year-olds that we now call the millennials. What their scientific study shows is our, quote, millennials today are more like 1930s and 40s than any cohort since 1940, and we call them the greatest generation. So why would I not be very, very positive about the future and the young people? I speak to young people in all kinds of groups frequently. And I love it when I always say to them, now you have very good memories, don't you? And they all yell, yes. I said, all right. Now remember 320 Park Avenue. And they all bellow back, 320 Park Avenue. I said, that's our offices. You have my card. You thought it was a business card. No, it is an invitation to breakfast, lunch, or dinner whenever you are in New York. And so I look forward to continuing. And when young people walk in that door, the other day, 3 young men walked in, and it was morning. They said, we're from Croatia. We're part of your University of Pittsburgh Hesselbein Leadership Forum, and we took the first flight out this morning at 5:30 so we could spend the day. Remember, you said, do come. We're ready to spend the day. Well, we threw out everything we had planned, and we had them. There's something about right now, whether here or abroad, something about the millennials. It is so inspiring.
Gives you
And
reason
the way
for...
they're volunteering all over the world, it's just so beautiful, so incredible.
Yeah.
So bright future is my battle cry.
I feel better already somehow. I know millennials. That's
Yes,
no,
you should.
yeah, well, yeah.
You should.
I'm surrounded by them. No, all 4 of us are going to go do something good because we've been in the
5 of
room
us.
with you.
I hope we don't say goodbye. I hope we stay together.
Well, we will. Again, on behalf of everybody at the Center for Leadership Studies and Marshall Goldsmith, our good friend, it is a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much.